Is there another U.S. intervention brewing? Haiti is in a state of chaos with violent protests raging on for weeks now due to soaring gas and food prices, as well as water shortage and rising crime. The island nation has been in a state of political unrest for over a year after the assassination of their president, Jovenel Moise, by a group of Colombian mercenaries, and things aren't getting any better. In fact, they're much worse. Now, some are calling for the U.S. to send in thousands of troops to quell the uprisings. Dan Cohen's been covering this story extensively, and he's here now to help us make sense of everything that's happening. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Kim.
Okay, so let's start. This has been really confusing, what is going on in Haiti, and a lot of people just don't really fully understand the scope of it. So let's just backtrack over a year ago when the president, Jovenel Moise, was assassinated. Was he a U.S.-backed leader? Was he a revolutionary type that the U.S. maybe couped against, or somebody else staged a coup against? Like, who was he and what happened with that?
Well, Jovenel Moise, who was assassinated in July 2021, was basically handpicked by the U.S.'s, the Clinton State Department's man, Michel Martelly, who had served as president, but his term ran out. So he takes this unknown banana exporter named Jovenel Moise, very meek guy, not a powerful politician by any stretch, puts him in. And Jovenel Moise, is very much doing the U.S.'s bidding, supported the U.S. Attempt at a coup in Venezuela, supported Guaido, but basically wanted to have some kind of legacy, had made some kinds of promises to the people of Haiti, and he went to basically the oligarchs who had put him into power and said, okay, I need money for this and that and that. And they said, no. And, you work for us. And then not long afterwards, he began a campaign of prosecuting them, for a couple of them, for corruption in the Haitian courts. And then not long after, he was assassinated.
Wow.
Yeah. So then at the same time, there's basically the beginning. Well, there's kind of constant protests and the beginning of an armed uprising that's beginning to take place in Haiti, which is at the center of it right now.
Okay, so going back to so Jovenel Moise, he's handpicked by the U.S. He then does it sound like he kind of went rogue? Is that what happened? Like he was supposed to be pro oligarch, pro corporate interests, and then he kind of turned and said, "Well, actually, the people kind of need some help."
I mean, I think he deviated maybe from it a little bit. I'm not, he definitely was not any kind of revolutionary figure or like a people's hero. He wasn't really popular or beloved by most of the people until after he was assassinated, because then it was like, wait, we didn't like him, but there were huge protests against him for him to step down because he had actually overstayed his term limit. But then a bunch of Colombians come in and assassinate him, like a dog taken out back.
Yeah.
And people were just up in arms. Like, look, we wanted to get rid of him, but not like that. That's
Right.
An attack on Haitian sovereignty is what, the people were really saying.
Do we know who did it? Who was behind these Colombian mercenaries? Who paid him?
It's still a mystery who were the intellectual authors of the assassination. But of course, there were 17 Colombian, or I think 28 Colombians who were involved in it, with kind of a core that actually knew what was going on. Ariel Henry, who was the interim prime minister, who basically took over as head of state after the assassination, is implicated in it. And there are signs of U.S. involvement. The U.S. sealed evidence in the prosecution of Mario Palacios, who was the trigger man in the killing of Jovenel. So there was a DEA chief, an ex-DEA chief, who said that just telegraphs CIA involvement. The fact that they sealed it. So it's kind of it's almost impossible that the U.S. wouldn't know what's going on. I mean, with all those Colombians there for a month ahead of time, a huge amount of money, they can tap any phone at any time. There's no way they don't know. They just there's obviously no kind of political interest in Washington to get to the bottom of it, which, kind of
Right.
says everything.
What would have been the motivation to allow for Jovenel Moise to be assassinated? I mean, if he was okay, U.S. backed and cozy with all of the U.S. interests, why would the U.S. then say, all right, let's, we're going to either be involved or turn a blind eye to him being assassinated?
I think the main motivation for Jovenel's assassination is that he was weak and the U.S. wanted to put someone in who was strong enough to basically put down this uprising, in particular the armed revolutionary element of it. And Jovenel couldn't do it; he was far too weak. And to this point, Ariel Henry, his replacement, has proven too weak as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing, is they just want to put down this uprising from the slums.
Got it. So what was going on was there was this kind of pro, Western interest, typical of what we've seen, like you mentioned, with like Juan Guaido in Venezuela. So we got that sort of figure in power, an uprising happening amongst the Haitian people who wanted him gone. They were not happy, but he couldn't really do it. He also wouldn't step down. And so he ends up assassinated. And now Ariel Henry is leading the nation, and he's implicated in that assassination, yet he's in power. Is that
Exactly,
yeah?
exactly. And it's just been essentially overlooked, though. In Washington, it's like an open secret.
So is Ariel Henry supported by the U.S. government?
Yes, he is supported by the U.S. government, but there is a shift going on because Ariel Henry is seen as a puppet of the United States, which he completely is. He is reviled in Haiti. I mean, if you go talk to just regular people in the streets in Haiti, nobody likes Ariel Henry. They all want him out, and that's the call in this uprising, is for him to step down. And he has no mandate. He's an interim prime minister for over a year. But what the U.S. wants to do is to transition to an opposition group called the Montana Accord, which is basically a bunch of the long existing political parties, and a bunch of so-called civil society groups, which are kind of the NGO types. A lot of them are funded by Washington. It's the same old political machine, but it's the other side of it. And both Ariel Henry and the Montana group are totally opposed to this ongoing uprising, but the U.S. is totally opposed to it too and wants to put it down. But they realize that if they send in some like advisors, police advisors, military guys to work with the Haitian National Police to basically assassinate the leadership of this uprising, then it's going to look really bad to the Haitian public. They do that with Ariel Henry in power. So what the U.S. figures, is we want to go to the Montana group, which has this whole kind of image as Haitian-led, even though it's, of course, the U.S. is very specifically hand-picked Haitians that are closely tied to Washington, and then the U.S. will lead from behind and accomplish the exact same goals. But they can't really do that with Ariel Henry in power because he's so unpopular and just totally seen as a U.S. puppet. So Washington wants to go with the other side.
So, but how do the people view the Montana group?
That's a good question. I mean, in the slums, we have. So I'm just about to release a documentary called Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising on this revolutionary movement called the G9. And I made this with Kim Ives, who I know you've interviewed and, is a longtime Haiti expert and has been an incredible privilege and honor for me to work with. And so, when we were in Haiti last year filming for this thing, nobody likes, the Montana group doesn't represent the needs of the masses in the slums who are living in the worst poverty in the Western Hemisphere. And I was just at a House Foreign Affairs Committee here in Washington today, and it's all about pushing the Montana Accord. And, and it's like, they're tools of Washington too. They're just have a little bit of a cleaner image because everyone knows that Ariel Henry was, implicated as part of the assassination of Jovenel Moise, and he's a finger puppet of Washington. But
Yeah.
I mean, the Montana group is just as dirty.
It's interesting. I was watching some of that from the Foreign Affairs Committee. I was watching some of the meeting from today, and they just keep saying Haitian led, Haitian led. Yet this is the Foreign Affairs Committee here in the United. I mean, it's U.S. led. It's clearly U.S. led, but they're claiming it to be Haitian led. But who are these Haitian leaders that they're supposedly turning to? I mean, clearly it's not Haitian led.
Right. Well, the leader of the Montana Accord is a woman named Magali Como Denis, who was involved in the 2004 U.S. orchestrated coup against then President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, the most popular president in Haiti's history, who was couped for a second time by the United States. And Magali Como Denis, head of the Montana Accord group, became the culture minister in the coup government that replaced Aristide. So, just another. It's like the U.S. has one finger puppet over here that is looking pretty bad because he was involved in some bad stuff, and so they're like, oh, we're gonna go with the other one that doesn't quite look as bad.
So it's interesting because it's an interesting strategy to say, okay, we're going to back a variety of different actors and we'll just see who the people like. And then whichever one the people kind of take to, then that's the one that we're going to push more so. But ultimately, that person is still being led by us behind the scenes.
Completely.
Wow. So now you mentioned, I was watching your piece on, you've done a lot of extensive reporting on this. Like you mentioned, you have a documentary coming out, but you also just recently released a video that is great. And I'm going to link that down below. But that you mentioned in there this gang, this is what also they talked about today in that Foreign Affairs Committee. They were talking about these gangs, but you put that in quotes, like as if they're not truly gangs. So who is this other group that is opposing Ariel Henry and the Montana group?
Right. So, I mean, of course, gang is a very loaded term. It implies criminal activity. And, what they mean by gangs is armed groups. So we have to differentiate between armed groups who are involved in criminal activity and armed groups who are not, who are, want revolution.
Right. More revolutionaries versus gangs. So they're calling them gangs and you're thinking they're more like revolutionaries.
Specifically the G9, what's called the G9 Family and Allies, which is led by a guy named Jimmy Cherizier. His nickname is Barbecue. And if you Google him and read about him in U.S. media, you'll think he's the biggest monster in the world. But one of the things that our documentary does, I spent a lot of hours poring over every single report, human rights report, all of it about him. And there's not a shred of evidence that backs up any of the accusations against him, principally that he was involved in a series of massacres. There's just not a shred of evidence. Our documentary is centered on Cherizier and his rise to become this, at least would-be revolutionary figure. I mean, we can't call him revolutionary unless he succeeds.
Right.
But everything that I see about him is that it's genuine, it's real, and there's a huge disinformation machine coming out of Washington, the U.S. Embassy, CIA cutouts like the National Endowment for Democracy that have dominated the entire kind of information sphere about Cherizier and the G9. And so that was a major topic of discussion at the House Foreign Affairs Committee today. And anyone who's kind of talking about Haiti these days knows who Cherizier is. Okay. And among the masses, he's quite popular. But among the elite, he's obviously not.
So what is it he wants that Ariel Henry and this Montana group are not doing?
Well, if you look at Cherizier and the G9's demands, it's basically just for the people who live in the worst poverty in the hemisphere to be able to have decent lives. So, they don't live in tin shacks with sewage flooding their homes on a daily basis, where they have enough food to eat. I mean, the poverty in the port right next to the shipping port where millions of dollars are passing through every day, import and export, that's the poorest area in the Western Hemisphere. And so neither Ariel Henry nor the Montana Accord nor any of these elite political forces want to address the material reality that the masses of Haitians are living under, which is just extreme poverty, which has only gotten worse with inflation. And so that's addressing that reality is the core of Cherizier and the G9's demands, and that's why he's gaining popularity.
Yeah. So what is it that they're talking about now? So there's some chatter about intervention. So is the U.S. going to be sending in 25,000 troops to quell what's going on in Haiti?
So I interviewed last week the former U.S. Special Envoy, for Haiti, Dan Foote, who he resigned in September 2021 after a bunch of Haitian migrants, asylum seekers, were deported. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
from Del Rio, Texas. They were deported, and he resigned. And he said, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. He was hailed as a hero, and he has thrown his weight behind the Montana Accord, as much of Washington has now. And he's saying, oh, the U.S. is meddling by keeping this puppet, Ariel Henry, who was involved in the assassination of the president. They're keeping this guy in, and this is U.S., intervention. This is U.S. meddling in Haitian affairs. So we got to go with these other Haitian-led guys. And then with the Haitian-led group, and you can see this in the piece that I did, then the U.S. can implement what's called the Global Fragility Act, which is a 2019 law act that was passed under the Trump administration by Congress that basically USAID, the State Department, and the Pentagon will act in coordination to kind of shore up U.S. control of its neo-colonies. This is global fragility. And so the first test case is Haiti. And so what they want to do is basically send special ops, like Pentagon special ops, JSOC hit squad trainers in to go and train a hit squad inside the Haitian National Police so they can go and take out Jimmy Cherizier and the other leaders of the G9 and put down this whole armed revolutionary movement. But so all the kind of everything in Washington is pointing towards the Montana group. They all want to go towards the Montana group, and that's but as long as so Foote says that if we don't do it that way, then the U.S. is basically going to be forced to just send in 25,000 troops. If we don't do it kind of the smarter, the Obama style secret proxy force way, then it's just going to be Bush style, 25,000 troops going wipe them out. So he says it's one or the other.
Well, and there have been people supporting that idea. I mean, I'm looking at op-eds that are being written in some of the major news organizations that are saying we need to be going in with a full force, spending more American tax dollars on this. And really just Haiti has been, I mean, it just seems to be U.S. intervention and meddling after U.S. intervention and meddling that has left these people in this situation. Their lives are clearly not better off. They've not gained any more wealth or become a better country through the many, many decades of U.S. intervention. So why do we keep even doing it?
Exactly. I mean, I think there are now 7 Washington Post editorial board op-eds calling for military intervention in Haiti since the assassination of Jovenel Moise. You just see it all the time. And, this is just empire. This is how empire operates. They can't have another Cuba or another Venezuela. The U.S. is, losing its grip on certain places, and particularly because Haiti has been a place that it has exploited so hard for so many decades, so many years in terms of the sweatshops. I mean, it's worse in those sweatshops than anywhere in Latin America. And so, the U.S. really wants to keep Haiti in its back pocket. And also because, if you look at the history of Haiti, Haiti has always been a vanguard nation, has been an example to other nations as a leader against U.S. empire and for freedom. The Haitian Revolution started the collapse of Western colonialism and chattel slavery. So symbolically, at the very least, it's very important, and for reasons of empire and finance, capitalism, it's really essential for Washington to keep it in its grip.
Well, we will keep our eyes on Haiti because it is in a state of total unrest right now, and we'll see what the U.S. I suppose does decide to do to get involved. Many of us would like to not see a bunch of troops going in. We're already spending so much money on foreign wars when we've got so many problems here in our own country. At the same time, we of course want the Haitian people to not be living in a state of unrest, but they really should get the government they want and not the government we want in power would be the ideal situation, I would think. So, Dan, we will continue to follow this. Thank you so much for being here and informing us on this. It's kind of a crazy thing going on down there.
No, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, we'll look forward to doing it again. And it's developing so fast
Yeah,
that, we'll
for
just
sure.
keep our eyes on it.
All right. Thank you.